Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Follow It for YouTube. I'm Joel Sains. That's my buddy Butch Rosenbalm. We're here to review the movie The Sons of Katie Eller, starring John Wayne, Dean Martin. Uh, there's some. I gotta make sure I get. George Kennedy is in this as one of the villains. I usually ask.
James Gregory.
Yeah, James Gregory. I usually ask when you first saw this, but what I found interesting about this Western, going back and rewatching it today, is that, you and I have talked a lot of Westerns, and we've talked about MacGuffins. I would dare say this is one of those first Westerns when I saw it and not realize it at the time because I was too young, that the boss in this movie, the guy who's hired for the hired gun, is not just a MacGuffin. He's a true villain himself here.
Yeah,
he can pull the trigger. What were your thoughts on that?
It's funny. I grew up, 70s and 80s. So by the time I started recognizing George Kennedy in films, he was playing, kindly grandfathers and helpful guys. So him playing, I didn't know he had a past career playing bad guys and heavies, and especially, with somebody as big as John Wayne, you have to have somebody big to go against him. So, the first time I saw him as a bad guy, it was like, George Kennedy. And let me tell you, he does a really good job in this film. And he is a sadistic little hee-ho. The scene with the blacksmith where he's holding the blacksmith's head down in the water, and he's just cackle, I wanted to see more about that character and where he came from and his backstory. He's probably more interesting than the quote main bad guy of Morgan Hastings.
He is Hastings. Yeah, the thing of it is that with this movie, Hastings' story, they explain right away. You kind of figure too, because I predicted this when I first watched this when I was a kid. I told my grandfather, that guy cheated somehow to get that land. And I had never seen it at that time before. My grandfather said, yes. And my grandmother's like, how the hell did you know that? so it was like one of those deals. And you're right, George Kennedy's character, it's like, man, that character he's mysterious. He's a gunfighter like John Wayne's character is. But I understand neither men are wanted in that area. Yeah. It's like, and then you find out Dean Martin's character is wanted somewhere. Go figure. I'm surprised it wasn't sleeping with somebody's wife. If you know Dean Martin's history, you get the joke. As Butch is shaking his head.
I thought of is Burt Lancaster in The Professionals. There at the beginning. You could have easily repurposed that scene with Dean Martin.
Oh, you could have too. You could have easily. It makes you think of Dean Martin too. I really like how John Wayne and Dean Martin got to do this movie too. It was nice to see them in another Western again. John Wayne little backstory. John Wayne had gotten a cancer diagnosis, and he did most of his own stunts in this movie. He had delivered a message about getting tested for cancer despite against his agent's wishes, which I found out about all that when I first watched this movie, because they had somebody commentating the entrance of this movie when me and my grandfather watched it, which was nice. It's a really fun Western too. I like how you have literally the sons of Katie Elder waiting at the train for John Wayne's character. George Kennedy's character gets off instead, and he's the most shadiest looking dude in any Western you'll ever see. Here's the thing. I think he could have wore any. He wears like a blackish grayish color. He doesn't wear, like, to me, all black. I love how they dress him in this movie. As crazy as that sounds, because there's times in westerns costumes look so good on a character. I would say definitely George Kennedy and the costume made each other look outstanding. What did you think, Butch?
Yeah, if it wasn't all black, it was dark enough. I mean, right away, we're still in the if you will, the golden age of westerns, or maybe the early silver age, but your characters were color coded. So I mean, I think that's what young Joel picked up on right away. He's wearing pretty much all black. So, yep, that's the bad guy. You don't have to worry about that. And it's a subtle thing, but it does get your attention, and you begin to associate certain aspects of that character. I mean, you don't. They used to say show don't tell when it came to films, and I think this is very much a case of that. You like you said, you look at him, you're like, yep, that's a bad guy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I love how they keep asking John Wayne's. So how fast are you? How fast are you? And now the sheriff in this movie, he is a noted sheriff in some other westerns, but he's also one of the most noted sheriffs in a little western TV series called The Rifleman. If you've ever seen it, great western television series. But he's the sheriff in here. Now his character, spoiler alert, gets killed. Obviously, I know, right? What did you think of the gun-toting deputy here? He's ready to draw on people.
He's a bit of an ass, just to be perfectly honest. I didn't like the character, and I don't think you're supposed to. He's a little too eager, and that's pretty much what the sheriff, Paul Fix, that you're referring to, tells him. And, like, you're ready to go draw on him, and the guy hasn't done anything. It's an obvious case of experience meeting enthusiasm, youthful enthusiasm. But the thing is, you're kind of towards the beginning of the film, you're like, you're not supposed to like him. He's kind of, like I said, he's kind of an ass. But as the film goes on, grows into his role, and by the end of it, you're like, okay, he's okay. Wait, what? They just killed him? You're like, damn. Oh wait, sorry, there's another spoiler alert.
No, I love how you did that though. That was good.
We were watching this. I was finishing this up today, and my wife came home, and I told her, "Say, I got to finish." My wife's not a big fan of westerns, but I'll say I got to finish this one up. Whatever. Sometimes she'll watch, sometimes she won't. And the scene is towards the end, and the deputy who all my notes are on my phone. My Kindle won't work, so I'm recording on my phone. So I'm like, a lot. I apologize. But the deputy is like, "Throw me a gun, I'll help you." And he goes to jump out, and he's like mid-jump. And Morgan Hastings, the main bad guy played by James Gregory, shoots him with this sniper rifle. Yeah. And one of the things that always cracks me up about westerns is the unrealistic impact of a bullet. So the man is on a ledge, and he jumps to get the gun, and I mean, he goes all the way back, and it's like, okay, Newton, I believe it's Newton's second law, tells us for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. Yeah. Paraphrasing there. So if that shot will knock a man all the way back, now admit it, he doesn't have anything to guard himself, but I mean, this is at least a 150-pound man. And that's a little bullet. I mean, even if it's a big bullet, that gun should fly out of James Gregory's head, or possibly even take his head off, because there's should be so much force. But I was telling her, I said, man, I sure as God would not want to shoot that gun. If you can knock a man out of mid-jump, that gun's got some power.
It does too. It's the Red Dead Redemption logic gun. That's what that is. That's
not any Red Dead gun, buddy. That must be some kind of mod you're playing there.
Here's the thing about the character's name to help Butch out is Ben. And he is a bit of a jerk. I think that's one of the most interesting things about this movie too, is you have your John Wayne, who has played gunman in other movies, isn't a bad guy in this movie, obviously. I would say, when you look at a movie where he's sort of on that level is where he's very mean. The meanest he's ever played is The Searchers, which is really a great movie. We covered that here. Me, you, and Patrick. So with this movie, he's a gunman, and Ben is so eager to go up against him. And I love John Wayne telling the sheriff, "Well, tell your deputy go out that other guy." I'm like, I'm just here to talk, pay my respects to my mother and see my brothers, and he does. I talked about stunts. There's a fight between the brothers, which is hilarious, which is one of the most fun-hearted fight scenes you'll ever see, and it reminds me of me and my brother, how we would fight a lot of times. So, and this also ends up in the deal of where they go on this cattle drive, if my memory serves me.
Not cattle.
Horses, sorry. Which is really, really interesting. Now, this also leads to what's going to happen later, because after they leave, the sheriff comes out, he gets shot, and everybody assumes it was them. They killed the sheriff. That they shot the sheriff. The elders shot the sheriff. Sorry. I
got here. My phone keeps sliding up. Go ahead, keep talking. I'm just. I apologize for oddness there. There we go.
It's okay. What did you think of the fight sequence between the brothers?
The one there and a half. There's one and a half. There's the one you're talking about there at the house, and then there's the one in the lake when they're throwing Bud in the lake. But the one you're talking about, it's an exaggeration, but yeah, it makes me think of like me and my cousin Mike when we used to roughhouse. And one of my favorite little scenes in this film, it's right towards the beginning of the fight, right after it starts, and John Wayne goes to hit Dean Martin, and when he does, I mean, we all know they're not really hitting each other. John Wayne hits the door for real, and you hear him go, "Ow!" And they left it in, and I love that part. It cracks me up every time.
It's fun, and it was really what makes it all lighthearted is John Wayne doing a lot of his own stunts in this, and knowing that he's coming off this cancer diagnosis, and he had gotten treatment, I believe, or surgery, one or the other.
He had surgery. They removed one of his lungs and some ribs.
Yeah.
And he wanted to show everybody he was okay. Now, what is not well known, at least according to my internet research, he was on oxygen for most of this film because he's got one lung now.
Mm-hmm.
They were filming it, I believe, in Durango, Mexico, which is like 6,000 feet in elevation, which is a little hard for an old man with one lung to breathe out of. So, when it comes, John Wayne's not the greatest actor. I think we all will agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
But John Wayne, and that's very much a case of someone having to go the extra mile to keep their image, if you will, and showing, like I said, John Wayne played John Wayne. When you hired him, you knew what you were getting. So he wanted to keep that image, and also, would have been kind of interesting if he hadn't been successful in hiding that. Because what would his future roles have been? What if he had moved to, if you will, the disabled old guy? Would he have been the grizzled deputy under the sheriff? Just things to ponder.
It really is, and you're right. I think that to see John Wayne, be John Wayne and be that tough guy, you applaud him because it's like he loved the United States. He loved America. And I do like the fact that he's taking a risk by going in front of people and saying, get tested. Because you could hurt your image by doing that. And he's like, you know what? I don't care. And that showed you, like, he'd rather tell people, hey, go to your doctor, get tested. It could save your life. You know, that's, or at least let you know what's going on.
You know, it's kind of crazy, though. Yes, I applaud. I agree with everything you just said. I think it's crazy that this could have hurt his career. I mean, you know, you know, the old folk and proverb, only Nixon could go to China. You know, here's somebody, Mr. He-Man, he's telling you go to the doctor. Yeah. I think that's incredibly brave, and yeah, I think it could have hurt his career. Of course, maybe at the time he was thinking, how much more of a career am I going to have? You know, that's I've been around enough people that got cancer to know, you know, that affects your thinking. So yeah, that was a really great thing. And in my mind, it's acts like that help us move toward a better understanding and be in a better place as time goes on. With, you know, with people like that going, if you will, against their image, so to speak, being brave enough to do that's a very commendable thing. And you know, I think we should all appreciate them for that.
Yeah, absolutely. What did you so the sheriff gets murdered. They blame it on the elders. The elders do ended up getting arrested and go, you know, we'll go willingly. We didn't do it. One of my favorite scene in this movie, and I gotta tell you, is when the elders are getting gunned down and John Wayne just goes off. John Elder just goes off. He's like, bam, bam, bam. Is my favorite scene in this movie because he is just pissed off as a character, and his facial features sell it all too. It's the ambush sequence that happens in this movie. It's really, really great. It's where Ben gets shot with a high-powered rifle, as Butch pointed out, which, as a scene, when you watch him jump that high and get hit, you're right, it is like, holy cow. It is. What did you think of that whole thing?
Yeah, you know, just a little bit more backstory on what Joel just said. The brothers have got ambushed. They're being taken to another prison because the deputy there, Ben, realizes it's beyond his capabilities. At least he's smart enough to see that. And one of the brothers, I believe it's Tom. No, it's Matt, played by Earl Holliman, later to be famous with the Policewoman TV series. He gets killed. Yeah. And yeah, you know, I find it interesting because the first time I saw this film, I'm sorry, I don't remember the first time I saw it. I didn't think he was dead because when death comes to a major character in the film, there seems like there's always a moment where like they're looking at him and maybe they shake him and they're like, oh no, and you have that, you know, I call it a Bruce Banner moment. You almost expect the angels to start singing and his eyes to turn green. You're like, ah, and we don't have that here. That is completely not done. You know, John Wayne's talking to him, and he's like, and he's trying to talk, and he's like, I wish, and maybe, and he dies, and yeah, John Wayne, and then you just see John Wayne just kind of, and he pulls out them 2 6 guns, and he just starts firing it, and I off the top of my head, I meant to research and I forgot. I think that's the first time you ever see John Wayne go two-fisted with the 2 6 guns. Now he does something similar with the rifle and a pistol in True Grit.
Yeah,
movie we'll eventually get to. But this is that's one thing I always hated playing in role-playing games and video games. It's like, you got 2 hands, you got 2 guns. Why are you doing it? Yeah, I know this is more, even then, even as a kid, I knew that was more accurate, but it's like, I'm going to lay down cover fire. Here you go. And you can just see he's kind of pissed. And also the younger brother, Bud, has been hit. They had some dynamite. They're on a bridge, and George Kennedy had put some dynamite and made the bridge collapse. and some of it in the younger brother Bud. So they're getting a little desperate.
Yeah, they are. George, what I found most interesting going back and rewatches, I believe George Kennedy's character gets killed here during the ambush sequence, if I remember correctly. He gets shot, and it's like, this movie's not over when you kill one of the biggest heavies in the movie at that point in time, because like you said, George Kennedy's character, he enjoys his work very much so. I love, one of my favorite things too is where George Kennedy tells the guy who hired him, he's like, that guy you ain't scared of and I ain't scared of? He got off he's like, he's here. And I love how he's agitating his own boss.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of my favorite lines in the film. Yeah, I totally agree. That guy that you're not scared of and I'm not scared of, and he says it obviously saying you're scared of him or else you wouldn't have hired me, but I'm not scared of him. And I believe, I tell you another quick moment with him, well, sort of with him, is when he's beating up on the blacksmith.
Yeah.
Wayne comes back to ask the blacksmith something, and he sees George Kennedy shoving the blacksmith down in some water, and he grabs an axe handle and he goes, "Hey, now on our big TVs now with the DVDs and the Blu-rays," God, I sound like the, you can see that it's a stunt man and it's not Kennedy, but he whacks him with that axe handle. And Mike, every time I watch it, it's like, because they film it. It's at the perfect angle. There's the perfect time reaction, and that stuntman, which apparently was John Wayne's own stuntman, excuse me, does it. He's like, pow, and you're like, oh my God, he really hit him. It just looks great. Yeah, there's a few punches in the brother fight scene that you can tell, but man, that stunt is perfect.
Yeah, you're right. That where he goes, John Wayne goes, hey, and you see the axe handle swing, and you hear the thud. The stunt man, which is, like you said, is John Wayne's. What a job he does. It looks so good. It looks better than anything in pro wrestling today, which is sad. Which is just saying something. Now, I do have a question for you, because the rocking chair just seems to move at times. So is the ghost of Katie Elder hanging around, Butch, you think?
That's an interesting thing. It's kind of funny you say that. My mother, who passed away about a year and a half ago, she had a thing about not letting rocking chairs rock with nobody in them. She said her mother, my grandmother, said that was the sign of a ghost or a spirit. So maybe to kind of tie into that a little bit, one of the things I was reading talked about how the movie's kind of anti-gun. Everybody looks down on John Elder because he's a gunman. They kind of, don't like Morgan Hastings, which is James Gregory's character, because he's a gunsmith and sells guns. And basically, they talk about how they want them to, kind of move beyond that. So you could say maybe Katie Elder is trying to influence them through the female lead, whose name is escaping me at the moment, because I can't look at it on my phone. That's where I put all my notes. But yeah, I think you can make a case for that. Now, is it like boogie boogie boogie? I'm a ghost. No, it's a subtle thing, and yeah, the chair does rock an awful lot, and they do focus on that a lot. So I agree with you. You could see it that way. I'm not going to say, oh yeah.
Yeah, Martha. I'm going to butcher this last name. Martha Heyer, played by Mary Gordon, is one of the females in this movie. Is the female lead in this movie. I think she's the one who comes by the house and gives them the food.
She's pretty much in this film, isn't she?
Yeah, I'm pretty certain she is. Hold on, yep, she's the only one. one who's a female in this one. Jesus Christ, there's so many. A young Dennis Hopper is in this movie. It's crazy.
Oh, she's the only, just to cut down back, she's the only main character. There's like a couple at the funeral. There's a woman holding a baby. She's like, "This is Katie, named after your mom." Main character, she's the only one. And according to IMDb, the actress that played Mary, you say her name was Mary?
Well, her actress name is Mary Gordon. The character's name is Mary Gordon. The actress's name is Martha Heyer.
According to what I read on IMDb, the actress, ended up marrying Hal Wallace, the producer of this film. Yeah,
it's always good to marry up.
I did.
There you go. And that's the thing too. What did you think of? Because we do get a guy who hires a gun. He ends up being a gunman. He ends up pulling his own triggers in this movie too. I'm not talking George Kennedy. I'm talking about the other guy. And he obviously, the climax takes place in town. I love how, because it was really shocking to see Dean Martin get shot. You rarely, like,
in the back.
Yeah. You want to talk about something that shocked me at first as a kid, was seeing Dean Martin's character get shot. I'm thinking, because in my mind I'm thinking, there's no way they're going to shoot Dean Martin. Wrong.
And when he's forcing young Dennis Hopper to go to the barn where they're hiding out, you see this blood stain in the back, and I'm reading probably too much into it, but looking at where the blood stain is, it's like, you should be paralyzed. That's going right. But
yeah.
Because I remember the first time I watched it, I think I missed it. We find out at the end that Dean survived. Though I wish they'd named him Matt, just kind of as a reference to the Matt Helm movies, which I believe he'd done at least one before this. But because I always wanted to call him Matt, and he's Tom. But I thought he died also, and kind of like Big Jake, there's this. For me, there was this weirdness at the ending. It's like, okay, well, 2 of your brothers died, and this is a happy ending.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm wrong. Dean Martin's character didn't die, but still, my thought is it a happy ending? Let me ask you that, Joel, because sure, all the Hastings are dead, and I'm sure their employees are like, well, crap, let's get out of here. But one brother, Matt, is dead. Tom is very wounded. Bud is wounded. And Tom's going to have to go back and stand trial for that murder that he's accused. So, is it a happy? Do they get the land back? I mean,
here's what I think happens, because one of my favorite. I did a Western list on my Facebook. Number 2 is The Great Silence. And The Great Silence has 2 different endings. It has the ambiguous ending where Silence is shot. You don't know if he's dead. And it has the good ending where he saves everybody. He guns down the gunman and ends up working for the sheriff. This here is a movie that I don't want to say it has an ambiguous ending, but its ending is very gray. It's not necessarily ambiguous. It's not necessarily happy. It leaves you with a big question mark that never really gets answered. And it's one of the most fascinating Westerns in that sense in John Wayne's career, because it asks, okay, what becomes of Tom? He has to go stand trial regardless. Do they get the ranch back? Because the sheriff said the deputy's dead. Maybe they do legally. Maybe I would say John Elder would, if they would. And it never really answers that. And that's one of the greatest things about this Western too that I enjoy. No, I'm not done. Here soon, I promise. No, with Butch. I'm here with my buddy Butch. Yeah, with somebody. Butch Rosenbalm.
I do believe they get the ranch back because, big spoiler alert, after Morgan Hastings, the main bad guy, kills young Dennis Hopper, who's playing his son. By the way, man, Dennis Hopper plays his weasel really good because. But when Dennis Hopper's character is dying, he's like, "Yeah, he found your dad, Bass." He goes, "Bass found out he'd been cheated," and he says this in front of the acting deputy. So I'm presuming they get the ranch or at least the land back. But yeah, it's even though John Wayne, if you will, kind of fought against the so-called modern Western, like we see in the Wild Bunch and even going to the Dollars trilogy. This kind of is leading into that way. Because, like you said, it's kind of gray. It's not a yay, everybody won. But John Wayne kind of been heading that way because I believe he'd already done the Alamo, hadn't he? And that's not really a happy ending. Not that film. I mean, the continuing story has a pretty happy ending, but Fear at the Alamo is not a happy ending.
Let me check. Let me make sure if he had done the Alamo before this or after this. This was 1965.
I think that.
The Alamo. Give me a second, Logan. No, I'm not done, son. I am busy. Okay. Oh, hold on, Logan. Is that camera on? Yes, it's on. Well, I'm typing something. Give me a second. Yeah, he did this. The Alamo was done in 1960.
Okay, that's what I thought. So yeah, he'd already been kind of, the Western, if you will, had been growing up a little bit. So this was another step in the evolution. Now let me ask you something, Joel, that I noticed. What's there's kind of two parts of it. One, you notice how they say Katie a lot, and they don't say mom or ma much. Now they do say ma a few times, but usually it's Kate. Well, Katie would like that. Yeah. And I realize it's a film and somebody wrote it, but that would seem odd. Like I was talking to Esther and I would go, well, Helen would like this or Helen would like that. I'd be like, well, mom would like this or mom would like that. And I don't think they call, well, Dean Martin calls him Pa, but usually they call their father Bass by his name. So I just thought it was odd that they called their parents by their name rather than mom and dad or whatever version. Did you catch that? Did it stick out to you?
Yeah, I caught that heavily in this. I know there's nothing. This is going to be weird. I know there's nothing like that in the sense of the Wild Bunch because there's no parents. But what I'll say to that is the four boys are at least all Bud wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
They're wild. And if Bud wouldn't have gone to college, if they wouldn't have done that, yeah, I'll get you a drink. If they wouldn't have done that, he would have probably ended up on the wrong side of the law. That's what I get from the elder. The elder boys call their mom and dad by their first name, not out of disrespect. I want to make that clear. Probably because they either told them, you know what, just call us by our first name because they realized, they're very wild. They're very rambunctious. I'm not meaning the actors. I mean, for anybody watching this, I'm meaning the characters. They're they respect their parents. They respect who they were. But the fact that they call them by their first name, in a weird way, seems to fit this movie. As crazy as that all sounds. I'll be right back, too. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Oh, well, hello. I'll try to come up with some interesting stuff. I was going to ask Joel. Interesting. John Wayne was like 58 when this was filmed, and his youngest son was played by an actor who was, I believe, 24. So he was, apparently she had some longevity there in between kids. When Joel comes back, I'm going to mention that to him, see what he says. 65. So John Wayne's getting kind of old, and he does seem a little old for this role because one of the things I was reading online said the character was supposed to be, late 30s, 40s, and like I said, John Wayne was 58, so seems a little old. And John Wayne's a gunman. Dean Martin is a gambler. Earl Holliman had a failed hardware store. And Bud had been to college, and actually the mother, Katie, who we never see, which is an interesting thing. She's very much the MacGuffin. Her death is the MacGuffin that starts this film and brings her. Oh, okay, you're back. I can't see you. You're a gray screen on my phone, so I didn't know if you were there.
So I was letting you talk. Sorry.
I was trying to. Her and the blacksmith that John Wayne saves, the mother in the blacksmith had cooked up a thing where they framed Bud for stealing a horse, and she's like, "You gotta get out of town. Go on to college. Here, go." And it was all an act. The blacksmith admits it to John Wayne. He's like, "Yeah, we cooked that up. Your mom cooked that up so he'd go to college." And she, whatever her feelings with her first three sons, she learned about the fourth one. Man, I get the impression this is not a woman you would mess with. I want to hit you up with something, Joel, and see what you thought.
Sure.
John Wayne was 58 when this was filmed. And the actor playing Bud, which, by the way, God, I can't stand his voice. Bud's actor was around 24, I believe. So there's about 34 years difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Earl Holliman, I believe, was on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. He said, John Wayne was like 60 and the other actor was like 20. And he's like, what kind of woman was this Katie Elder?
Here's the thing. We, obviously for everybody who knows me, and Butch knows me very, very well, my favorite Western is Once Upon a Time in the West. And one of the characters in that movie is named Jill. And Jill was a whore from New Orleans. In Once Upon a Time in the West.
Thank you.
Now, God, there's in this movie, I don't think Katie is like a prostitute or whore. I think Katie, in every way, is a rough and tough country girl, and that's the sense I get from Katie. Again, it's a character we never meet. Literally, because like you said, her death is the MacGuffin of this story, and it is. And every way, it's the driving force of this movie. And everywhere, that's one of the another amazing things about this Western. A character you never literally see or physically meet is it's another reason I put this on the list. That's what's most fascinating about it. It's called The Sons of Katie Elder, but in every way, Katie Elder is the biggest part of this story as much as John Wayne's character. That's what's so great about this that I enjoy.
I'm gonna throw Joel a curveball so everybody watch his face as I say this. Hey Joel, who would you have cast as Katie Elder if you could cast anybody appropriate from that time?
Oh shit!
That's what I said when I thought of that.
You know who I would have cast? 1965, right?
Yeah, 65.
1965. As much as I would have cast, what's her name? I'm trying to think. Not Betty Davis.
Joan
Crawford.
I keep coming back to one actress who gets on my nerves, but I could see her being the mother of these four guys. The only thing is she played John Wayne's wife in 2 films, so that's a little squeaky. But Maureen O'Hara.
Yeah. I'll give you one. Even though I don't think she was ever in a Western, Barbara Stanwyck.
Okay, yeah, we did Double Indemnity. You know how much I dislike Barbara Stanwyck, and I still can't tell you why. The only thing is, and why I would probably go more with your Joan Crawford suggestion.
Yeah.
Maureen O'Hara in Big Jake. Have we ever done Big Jake? Because if we haven't, we really should.
No, not.
Okay, we got to do that sometime. She is such a force. It's one of the few times I can stand her because she meets back up with John Wayne in that film towards the beginning, and she's like, "Yes, he will." Talking about their son who'd been shot. He will live. I will not permit myself to think otherwise. And I mean, she's just like this force of nature. And there's a point where the lone female Martha here talks about. She says, talking about Katie. She goes, Katie felt like Texas had taken 3 of her sons, and she wasn't going to let him take Bud. And you see Maureen O'Hara be defeated, if you will, like that. That's my problem with her, or even Barbara Stanwyck, because whether I like Barbara Stanwyck or not, her characters are strong, and this Katie Elder as a character, I won't say starts off weak, but she obviously gets stronger and learns from her losses of John and Tom and Matt and getting to Bud. She was not going to fail with Bud. So the one problem with Maureen O'Hara or Barbara Stanwyck is I just, not that they can't act, not that they can't play that. Just that's not how I see them. Right. So Betty Davis or Joan Crawford, somebody like that has a little bit of wear and tear on their soul, if you will. I think that probably is better.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think too, this movie works best without the physical adaptation of Katie Elder. Now, would I have loved to see a physical adaptation? Hell yeah. Physical character, sure. But what really sells I've talked about that rocking chair. That rocking chair makes you feel that I always envision a woman sitting there doing that. It's like she's watching that. And that's why when I watched this as a kid and rewatched it again today, because I've seen it throughout my life, it's just like, that woman is hot in her guts. It's like, that's the fun part about this movie. I gotta ask you, scale 1 to 10, what do you give this movie?
I give it a 7.
Yeah.
It has minor flaws. Some of the scenes are a little slow. It's a little drawn out. But it's still fun. And sometimes it's not fun. When Tom dies, or excuse me, when Matt dies, and when Bud almost dies, when Billy dies, the sheriff. I mean, it's not like, oh, ha ha ha. It's not McClintock, where you're cut off pretty much the whole time. It's not that type of film. That being said, it's still an enjoyable film. It's enjoyable to watch. Other than Bud, I feel like the sons have a great camaraderie and charisma with each other. They play well off of each other. The amusing thing I found was the original actor to play Bud, that was cast to play Bud, got arrested at a party in Los Angeles and that had marijuana, and he was immediately dropped, and they very quickly hired the guy that played him. And I don't. He does well for the role as written. I just didn't care for him. Same thing with Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper was playing weasels during this time. I mean, always kind of little slimy guy. It's good for him that he decided to be Jack Nicholson light, because that probably expanded his career, because there wasn't much for him left. Let me ask you something.
Yes, sir.
the scene in the bar where Tom is raffling off his eye.
Yeah.
Where the hell does Strother Martin come from? It cracks me every time he shows up. It's just like,
well, I know wrestling fans will get this analogy, so I apologize in advance, Butch.
Oh, go ahead.
He descended from the Raptors like Sting did in WCW on a cable hook. He unleashed, and then shit happened. No, I don't. That's a great question, because every time I've watched this, I'm thinking, what the? Where? And it's just like, did Houdini tell this? Did the ghost of Houdini say, "Hey, dude, I got a magic trick for you"? Bam!
The ghost of Katie Elder did.
Damn straight, I believe that shit too.
What do you give this one?
A solid 7.5. It's really a fun movie, and it's just so enjoyable because you literally have a character whose death is the storyline around this movie, and the woman herself is a presence in this movie, even though she's physically not there. That's what makes this movie so enjoyable. Not just John Wayne and Dean Martin. Sure, they're here. They're we know why they're here. God, they're Dean Martin and John Wayne. But you're right. Dennis Hopper's a weasel. The sheriff's deputy is a dick. You know what? Ben caught? The most deserved bullet in deputy history. Okay.
Right after he finally got his head cleared out of his cranium, out of his rectum, so to speak.
He may have not caught it from the right person, but he caught it. Goddamn.
It the first time I watched this, I don't know if have you either read or watched the film or comic book series Watchmen?
I've seen the movie.
Good enough. Because the movie is actually a pretty close adaptation. I mean, yes, it leaves stuff out, blah, 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 blah. But especially in the comic book, but you get it also in the film, the death of the comedian at the beginning of Watchmen, even though we have flashbacks, is what starts all this going. And the death of Katie Elder is what starts all this going. So admitted, they're not playing superheroes or anything, and there's not a plot to save/destroy the world. But I remember the first time I watched it, I was like, "Huh, she's kind of like the comedian," and that she starts all this going. Now, again, she doesn't show up, but we kind of get the flashbacks when Martha's like, "Well, your mom this," and she read the letters, and she noticed you change, and she lied to her. So, I mean, everybody in Clearwater pretty much hates the elder boys. They make no bones about it. I think it all rolls off of John Wayne's or John Elder's back because he's a gunman. But there's something I noticed, and I think I noticed this every time I watch the film. Every time one of the elders goes into town, literally everybody in town stops and turns and looks at him. I don't know if it was, starstruck extras going, "It's John and Dean Martin," or what, but if you haven't seen the film, or if you have, it's on Pluto for free. Yeah. But watch every time they come into town. Everybody in town turns to look at them. I mean, they stop what they're doing. Now, does that kind of plays into everybody knowing that John Elder is a gunslinger, and they're probably a little scared of him, and unlike in your traditional westerns where everybody's like, "Man, he's a gunslinger, we'll leave him alone," they're like, "He's a gunslinger, and we don't like him."
Yeah.
He has low honor in Red Dead Redemption 2, and nobody wants to sell to him.
The stores got boarded up on. It feels that way too. That's a great point. Did
you play Red Dead 1?
Yes, absolutely.
You remember the shopkeeper? I want to say it's Armadillo. His name is Moon.
Herbert Moon.
I forget. He's a racist piece of crap.
Yeah.
In Red Dead 1, I kind of with him because he came down for a good part of the adventure, and then finally, he says something about Jews, and I'm just like, The hell did you say? What? For anyone that don't know, Rosenbaum is a Jewish name. I'm not Jewish. My family's not Jewish, but we are of Jewish descent. And I'm just like, I'm always a little, I don't know, sensitive is the right term about it because it pisses me off. But and first time in that game, I pulled out a double. Like
20 times every time I go into that town.
after that, I would rob. I would go in and I would buy what I needed, and then shoot, kill him, and rob him. But it's just like I kind of avoided it because it doesn't pay to cause too much trouble at home base. But
no,
like no, we're not playing that game.
It's fun to do too. This was a fun movie and fun to discuss. Is there anything you want to add before we go?
No, because like I said, I can't see my notes.
Butch, in 2 weeks, dude, 2 movies, 310 to Yuma, both versions.
I have the original? Do you know if the remake is available anywhere?
I bought it recently on my Xbox. That's all I know. I don't know. I'll try to find it.
I saw it in the theaters. It's see, isn't it Crow and Christian Bale?
Yes. Butch, my friend, thank you so much.
No problem, Joel. Pleasure as always.
Peace.